I bought a hotel, a 58-room hotel. So I started in residential real estate and I decided to jump in to motel business. I'm actually going to jump in and make this video because of a comment that I had. Someone was curious about how I made the jump to a motel business, so let's break it down. Now, I've made a video a while back that I was going to buy a residential house every single year for the next 10 years, and that was kind of my retirement plan, was to buy a house, rent it out, and then just keep expanding. And I had built up 2 long-term rentals and I had an Airbnb as well. Then I shifted and saw an opportunity in a motel, so I jumped in it. So this video is going to break down why I did that and how I did that. So a little bit of a backstory. I have practiced as a CPA, that's a certified public accountant, for like the last 8 years. And in part of that, I did some accounting for a small motel. So I got my feet a little bit wet. I know the industry a little bit. And then I also ran an Airbnb with my wife. That helps me get into that as well because short-term rentals are very different than long-term rentals. There's just a different ball game in it. And so I knew a little bit about the industry, so jumping into a motel wasn't too scary. So a business partner and I found a motel in the town that we actually grew up in and where I currently live that was run down. It was a little bit run down. It had been non-operational for the last 3 years. There's just, circumstances happened and the hotel just wasn't operating for the last 3 years. So knowing full well that it needed a bunch of renovations and a bunch of work, we jumped in. I did some projections and I jumped into the motel business. So the decision to jump into the motel business was pretty simple because my business partner, he was the one that owned the motel that I was doing accounting for. And then I had the accounting experience and the Airbnb experience. So we jumped into it. So I built a very simple forecast knowing what our market did because I was doing accounting for a hotel there, and knowing the margins that a hotel could get. So this is what I broke down. I'm going to show it to you real quick. So I just put the price per room, how many rooms we were going to have. So the hotel that we bought was a 28-room motel. And then occupancy rate, how many rooms I expect to rent out in a year. Now, this fluctuates greatly in my area. So during the summer, especially like May and September, I can have like 90% occupancy. But then in December, January, February, even November a little bit, my occupancy tanks because it's winter, it's not as cold, or it's colder, and so we just have lower occupancy. So throughout the year, I put 50%. Obviously, we have rentable nights of 365. So that's where I can get into my gross revenue, is just taking $125 times 58 rooms times 365 days, and then multiply it by 50% because I'm only going to be occupied 50% of the time. And then I knew that net margins for hotels kind of fluctuate in between that like 15 to 25% range. So I put 20% in here, and this is where I can get to my net income. So I saw the projections and I liked the numbers. And that's me. I am all about the numbers. That's how I end up making my decisions on real estate, is whether or not they pencil out by the numbers. Because if you stick to the numbers and you can get confident in your ability to forecast or confident in your ability to know what rent is for your market, you can see how much debt it's going to take to purchase the home, and then you can see how much you're going to make, and then it's pretty simple math. So knowing that my projections could bring net income of $250,000 every single year, it was easy to jump into the hotel market. So I still like that it was real estate. I have the residential real estate, and so to go into more commercial real estate was awesome. So in doing this, I took a from the purchasing of residential real estate, but that's still my plan. I like this, and if the hotel goes well and we can find another hotel that would be a good investment, then I'm all for jumping into that as well. But as of right now, the plan is to still go into residential real estate, but I do want to go a little more large scale on the next one. So I used to just buy single family houses one by one, but it's slow. The growth is kind of slow. So my next goal is to jump into an apartment complex or even like a fourplex to get my feet wet in that multifamily housing. That way you just have 4 times as much rent. And if you do a fourplex and if you have an apartment complex, then you can get a lot more. And so that's probably the next big jump for me, is to build up my equity and then go and buy multifamily housing. So in a video in the future, I'm actually going to break down all of the renovations that we had to do for this motel. Like I said, it was in rough shape just because it had been non-operational. And if you leave real estate alone for too long, especially buildings, they just deteriorate. It's better to have somebody living in it than not living in it. And this one just hadn't had anybody in it. So there was a bunch of renovations. So I'm going to break that down for you as well, just showing you all of the cool things that we were able to do with this motel. So in a nutshell, that is why I decided to jump into the motel business. If you have any questions, please hit me up in the comment section, and we'll talk to you guys next time. If you've liked what you've learned and want to learn more about personal finances and real estate investing, please consider subscribing.